ActionCom's got a question for you, Culture. When do you think the public lost their trust in entertainment journalism? When Ebert died? Ghostbusters 2016? I don't know if they've ever really had public trust in entertainment journalism. What do you
I
think?
think that they did, but the question is for culture.
I think it started to fall off right in there. To be honest with you, I don't think it was don't think it was the passing of Ebert, but I do believe that when it was quite clear that they were no longer writing their reviews, that they were actually essentially written statements that were provided by the studio. I think that when that started to become more and more evident across the board, especially with the major publications, I think that was then. And yeah, it could be around Ghostbusters 2016, but I think it started before that. I think it was probably 2012, 2013 that I started to notice that everything read like a press statement or press release. That reviews were more filled with adjectives that were complimentary. When honestly, especially when you started to hear the same phrases repeated on the press tour by the people that were promoting the film, the stars themselves, when those things line up with the same things that are being published, I think that was about then, if I remember right, 2012, 2013, 2014.
Well, here's the thing is you guys are operating under the idea that that was the rule when that period was the exception. I got to remind everybody that Hollywood has run their image since going way back to the days of Citizen Kane and everything else up and through outside of the McCarthy era. Like, it's always been about access media. Ebert and those guys were an exception.
Yeah.
They didn't give a fuck what anybody thought. In fact, they went to work for Disney, and the first thing he told them was, "We're not giving your movies good reviews. So if that's going to be a problem, we don't have to sign this." Or he didn't specifically say we're going to give you bad, but we're going to give your movies fair reviews. And if that's going to be a problem, then we're not going to do this. And they were reluctantly agreed with that. But that's the point is. The media has always been controlled. That's what you got to remember is the outlets that do these reviews 9 times out of 10 are owned by a company that owns these movies. So they've always been clouded.
Yeah.
Until you had independent people like Ebert and some of those guys in that era. Yeah, that's when you finally got more real journalism on it. Yeah.
And they could go outside at that point because they were making their money not from necessarily the newspapers that they worked at. They were being paid TV studio money. That was very beneficial to them. And this was at a time when most studios weren't necessarily aligned with the TV networks or TV stations that they appeared on. And you have to remember, I think that show started in Chicago. Back when
on PBS, actually,
yeah, we had WGN, which was a super station, a super regional, and expanded, their reach into a cable market. That would be a fun video to do, the history of Siskel and Ebert, right? Because they were quite.
Well, there is a great documentary out there actually that was produced by Roger's widow.
Oh, really?
I'm trying to remember what it's called. I think it's called "I'm Roger Ebert." Or I Am Roger Ebert. It's a great documentary. But yeah, they started out on PBS and then they branched out and did a different show altogether. And that's when they went into syndication. And then they signed on with Disney for a bigger syndicated deal back in the late 90s or late 80s, one of the two. I can't remember. Yeah. But yeah, of course, they were working from the late 70s on. And then after Siskel died, Ebert continued until he passed away. So
this also speaks to something cultural because we got into this.
It's called Life Itself. Never mind.
Yeah, I'll
Life
have to
Itself.
check it out. But
the book is called, I think, I Am Roger Ebert, or something like that.
But this gets into a broader cultural issue here in the United States. You had middle America sensibilities, coming from Siskel and Ebert, right? They weren't on either coast, and as even when they went to TV, they didn't become Hollywood. Right, at least not for a long, long time. And then when you think about it, where did all the late night talk show hosts used to come from? Middle America. So you had Middle America sensibilities speaking truth to power on the coasts on these late night programs. We've
That's
changed,
a good point too. Yeah,
we've changed culturally in that now the coasts try to dominate culture. They never look outside themselves for the next big thing because they're always focused on where they are. That's a problem. It's very myopic, and that's again a bigger, broader issue with Hollywood. Anyway.
Yeah, I guess the book is the same title, so I don't know which book I'm thinking of, but anyhow.
And just to finish off that discussion, that is actually what spurred the creation of Midnight's Edge 2, and I can tell you exactly what that was. It was Trankgate. It was the Fantastic Four. That is what spurred it, because there we saw it was basically written in stone that the movie was going to be a disaster. There was maybe at best it might be an okay movie in its own right, but it was going to be an absolute subversion of what the Fantastic Four was going to be, and you had the entirety of the media complex behind it just regurgitating the studio talking points. The fans are horrible. We like this movie. We like this cast. We like this director. Therefore, we must all go to see it. So when people say spin-free news or try to use that against or something, Midnight's Edge was spin-free news because we did not buy into that. We spoke entertainment news, but without buying into the same amount of spin that everyone else bought hook, line, and sinker. That's what that's referred to.
That's the big difference there, like going back to the initial question in the super chat. That would be the change was... Before this, if the Hollywood knew they had a shit product on their hands, they would just bury the damn thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And they would never, and I mean never, blame the fans for anything.
Right.
And I mean anything. Even if they knew the fans were fucking wrong, the studios would still buckle.
Yep.
Great example. You guys are familiar with the film The Warriors, right?
Yep. Warriors. Come out and play.
Andre?
I'm familiar with its existence, but I don't recall it right now in this.
Okay, well, I wish you had, because if you've seen it, culture will tell you it's not a very bad movie. It's not real violent. It's very theatrical. It's it's kind of a classic kind of tale set in this idea of these very theatrical, like I said, gangs in a big city. Yeah. The movie got pulled, even though it was making a ton of money, because a few fights broke out in theaters and parents were afraid that it was going to get kids to start becoming gang members. Even though that has nothing, there's no proof of that, right? Like, that's just one example of how knee-jerk the studios used to be to the audience's reaction to something. But now all of a sudden, and that was where you said it, Andre, that's the first time in history I remember it happening, and then Ghostbusters really was like a megaton bomb where they turn their finger and go, no, you're the problem.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, hold on here. Time out. I'm not the one who's selling this piece of shit like this, right? That's the difference here. You're trying to sell me on this.
But don't you think, and this is a question for both of you, don't you think that that's exactly what Chapek said in the memo, was trying to return to that, having the audience be the thing that governed the way the studio operated?
Yes. Exactly. It used to be that way.
So
that's that. Yeah. So that's why we were kind of energized that Disney might turn the corner. Boy, were we wrong. Holy crap.
Well, I see some more of your fans in the chat.
Here's the thing, though. Like any huge ship, it takes time to turn them around.
Exactly, but this is unprecedented, and I think it goes along with what we were pointing out before, and that is that this whole thing was manufactured from the start, so they had to create scapegoats, and that's why we've been so gaslit, or they've tried to gaslight us anyway.